that as you rock, they're inverted. And that would be kind of what you expect, because if you take the IK off and you rotate these, they mirror each other. So you kind of want all these IK controls to work the same. So we went ahead and inverted our rotate Z's on our pivots on the right side. And that's one reason why we use set-driven keys instead of direct connections. We could have still inverted this by plugging the value through a multiply divide node and multiplying the value by a -1, but there's another reason why we use set-driven keys that we'll see here in a minute. So let's go on to the toe lift. Toe lift is actually pretty easy if you've been following along and seeing how we're setting up the set-driven keys. We'll come over here to set-driven key, bring that up here, and load that up as the driver. We're going to have the toe lift, and then we will have the toe lift pivot as the driven. Rotate X, key that at 0, we'll set that to 10, and it really doesn't have to be set to 10, because as long as it's linear, it could be 1 to 1, it could be 100 to 100, that part doesn't matter, because we're going to make it infinite. As long as it's a linear relationship. I just like 10 because then you can see 10. Now you'll see that pretty much nothing happened because 10's putting you back down into the floor and then it's colliding. But if we come in here, so again, change those so it's a nice linear interpolation. Pre and post affinity is linear. Turn that K back on. And then you'll see here, and it's lifting just fine. And try to lift it down and it collides with the floor. So there's a couple more things we can do. I'm going to leave it as this for now because that's fine. One thing you could do is you can invert that, because right now we have a negative toe lift, which is raising it. I actually don't have a problem with that, but if it doesn't make sense to you that a negative number is raising the toe, you can always just go into the graph editor and invert it. You'll also see that as you try to push it through the floor, if you push it far enough, it will kind of start breaking a bit because it's trying to reach that IK handle. You could set a limit on that. I prefer not to. You never know when you want to have a situation where you've risen up above the floor and you kind of want to make it look like the toe's grabbing something. Generally, it's just understood that if you push it too far, it will break. And that's pretty much the same with any rig. So that's the toe lift. That one's pretty easy. Now we're going to look at the auto rock and the auto roll. Now for the auto rock, I want the foot to be able to rock back and forth in a natural motion. Now we have like the heel rock here, but if you notice, see how the foot's kind of going through the floor here? Because it's rocking from a center pivot. And that's not natural. Usually when you rock, you're going to rock out this way and then out this way, because your foot is actually colliding with real geometry. So what we're going to do is we're going to have this auto rock control both of these. And this is basically the same idea that we've been doing all along, except we're going to do half for one and then half for the other. That's the only difference. So this is going to be in the rotate Z. Let's go ahead and key that. So now let's do an auto rock of 10. And what I like to do is I'll type that in as 10. So now I'm going to key it there and I have a 1 to 1. Now I'll put it to -10 and I'll come to the other one and I'll rotate that out -10. So now when I'm rocking it, that's more as if it was rocking against a real ground. Now I still need to make those infinite, but the trick is that I only want one of them infinite in one direction and the other one infinite in the other. Let's go ahead and select those both. And again, we want to change those splines so they're a nice linear interpolation. I'd rather let the animator deal with the ease in and ease out than baking it into the rig. So this is going off in this direction. This is the medial, so we want the post affinity to be linear. Post affinity meaning that direction. For the other one, we want that to be the pre-infinity. And so now I can rock that as much as I want. Now the last thing we're going to do to set up here before we start finishing up with our pull vectors and hooking it up to the bind is this auto roll. Now when we first put the auto roll in, we did not set a limit, and that was a minor mistake. What we're going to do is we're going to come in here and edit attribute, and we're going to give this a minimum and maximum. We're going to give a minimum of -5 and a maximum of 10. The -5 and the 10 are actually kind of arbitrary numbers. You can set these any way you want, but what I like to do is I like to have 2 times forward than I am back, and I'll show you what I mean here in a minute. This could be 10 to 20, 50 to 100. The numbers don't really matter as long as it's -1 value this way and +2 values the other way. And even that you don't need to do. I just think it's very clean if you do. So what this auto roll is going to do is this is going to automate a footstep. So the first thing I'm going to do is I need to bring up that set driven key, and I need the heel pivot, the ball pivot, and the toe pivot. And I'm going to load all those in. This is going to affect the rotate X of all of them. So let's go ahead and select all those and then key them. Now notice it changed from this kind of orangey red color to this yellow color. That's because it has a new incoming connection now. If you map that, because we are setting a second set driven key curve, is being blended together with the original. And this is the #1 reason why we have done it using set driven keys as opposed to some kind of direct connection, because a direct connection would not intuitively allow us to blend 2 different controls together like this. Not to say it can't be done, but this is a very easy way to accomplish this, and that's why we've chosen set driven keys. So now I'm going to set this to a -5. So if we rotate that back to say a nice -15. And keep in mind that since it's blended with the original one, if we want more, we can always add that to the heel roll to increase that. So it's not like we're stuck with this. We'll go ahead and set a key there. And so this would be the foot stepping down as it's coming into the step. This would be because I keyed it to the wrong attribute. It's auto roll. There we go. I put that on the wrong one. It's auto roll that's got the... There we go. So now we can step back. This is the foot stepping down. That's the heel striking the ground. 0 is the step. So now for 5, we want to rotate the ball up, and let's rotate that about 20. Looks good. And again, we still have the ball roll attribute as well, so the animator could actually push this manually and make it go farther. So let's go ahead and key both of those. And then the next one is 10. And 10 will be the stepping off. So I want to set that back to 0 and rotate that about 25 is good. And I'll key both of those. So now you can see we have, looks like a fairly natural step. And again, the values are just what I think looks good. We can always increase that heel step. We can change the ball. Maybe instead of 20 we want it 25 or 15, whatever looks good. That becomes more of a animator choice. And again, there's alternate pivots. We could, if we really wanted to push it, because they are SDKs and they're blended, we can add to it like so. But this just becomes a very convenient thing for the animators, and if you have that set up properly, they'll use the auto roll pretty much exclusively to do their walk cycles with.